You didn't end up here by accident. I need you to hear that before anything else. Not as a phrase. Not as something polite to say at the beginning of a video. I mean it in the most literal way possible. The fact that you are here, right now, watching this, means something already happened to bring you to this exact moment. And if you're honest with yourself, you know that too. Maybe today felt heavier than usual. Maybe you woke up with something sitting on your chest that you couldn't quite name. Maybe you've been asking a question, not out loud, maybe not even in words, but asking it, somewhere deep, waiting. And then this appeared. That's not random. That's never random. There's something about the way certain moments find us. Not when we go looking, but when we've finally gotten quiet enough to be found. And if you've been feeling like something is trying to reach you, like there's a message just outside your hearing, today I think you can understand what that's been about. Stay with me. There's a word people use when they don't have a better explanation. Coincidence. They say it quickly, almost defensively, like saying it fast enough will keep the mystery from settling in. You ran into someone you hadn't thought about in years, right after thinking about them. You heard a song at the exact moment you needed those words. You almost took a different road that day, and something made you stay on the one you were on. And later you found out why. Coincidence, people say. And then they move on. Because sitting with that feeling, really sitting with it, is uncomfortable. It asks something of you. It suggests that maybe the world is not as random as we've been told. That maybe there is something listening. Something arranging. Something that knows you far better than you know yourself. I've lived long enough to stop calling those moments coincidences. And I think you have too. That's why you're still here. The angels. And I use that word not as a religious label, but as a description of something most of us have felt but rarely speak about. They don't work the way we expect. We were taught somewhere along the way that if something sacred wanted to reach us, it would arrive with thunder, with a vision, with something impossible to ignore. But that's not how it works. That's almost never how it works. They speak in the language of ordinary things. A stranger who says exactly the right sentence. A door that closes so that another one you never would have found otherwise, has room to open. A feeling in your chest that has no logical explanation but that you've learned, over the years, to trust. You've felt that. I know you have. Because people who haven't felt that don't end up watching videos like this one. They don't go looking for this kind of conversation. But you did. And there's a reason for that too. Let me tell you something that took me a long time to understand. The signs were never hidden from us. We were just too loud to hear them. Our lives fill up with obligations, with noise, with a constant hum of worry and planning and regret. And somewhere inside all of that, the quieter messages get buried. Not lost. Never lost. Just waiting. Waiting for a moment exactly like this one. When you've slowed down enough. When something in you said, not today. Not the news. Not the scrolling. Something else. Something real. That something, that pull, is itself a sign. The desire to seek is never separate from what you're seeking. The moment you feel drawn toward truth, toward meaning, toward something larger than your daily concerns, you are already in contact with it. Already being guided. And here is what I want you to hold on to as we go deeper into this together. The universe, the angels, the divine, whatever word carries the right weight for you. It is not sending you signs because your life is perfect and everything is fine. It sends signs most urgently when you are at a crossroads. When you are tired. When you've been carrying something for too long and you're starting to wonder if any of it means anything at all. The sign doesn't come after the breakthrough. Comes before it. Comes to let you know that the breakthrough is possible. That you are not forgotten. That someone, something is aware of exactly where you are and is already working on what comes next. That's not a coincidence. That's never been a coincidence. I want to tell you about a woman I once knew. She wasn't famous. She wasn't someone whose story made the news. She was just a woman who had built a life, carefully, brick by brick, and then watched a good portion of it come apart in the span of about 18 months. Her marriage ended. Her health gave her a scare that took months to resolve. Her youngest child moved across the country. And she told me once, sitting in a kitchen that felt too quiet, that she had started to feel invisible. Not to other people. To God. to the universe, to whatever it was she had believed in her whole life. She said it plainly, the way people say things when they've stopped trying to sound okay. She said, "I don't feel like anyone is listening anymore." And then she told me what happened next. She had gone for a walk, not for any spiritual reason, just because the walls were closing in, and she sat down on a bench near a small pond she'd passed 100 times without really seeing. And a little girl, maybe 5 years old, walked up to her completely unprompted, looked her directly in the eyes and said, "Don't worry. Things are getting better." And then the girl ran back to her mother. Now, you could call that a coincidence. A child saying something random to a stranger on a bench. Children say all kinds of things. There's a perfectly rational explanation. I know that. She knew that. And yet something in her shifted in that moment in a way that no rational explanation could account for. She told me she walked home differently than she had walked out. She said it was like something had been returned to her that she hadn't even realized she'd lost. What was returned wasn't certainty. It wasn't proof. It was something quieter than that. A sense of being seen. A sense that the silence she had mistaken for absence was not absence at all. That's the thing about signs. They don't come with certificates of authenticity. They don't arrive in a format that eliminates all doubt. They come in a form that requires something from you. A willingness to receive, a softness in the place where you've been hardened by disappointment. And that's not a flaw in the system. That's the system. Because a sign that required no faith would change nothing in you. It would just be information. And information by itself has never transformed anyone. What transforms us is the moment we allow ourselves to be moved by something we cannot fully explain. When we stop defending ourselves against wonder. When we say out loud or just inside, maybe this means something. Maybe I am not alone in this. That opening, that small, vulnerable maybe, is itself an act of tremendous courage. Especially if you've been hurt before. Especially if you've prayed and waited and felt like the prayer dissolved into air. Especially if you've been the kind of person who learned, the hard way, that hope can be expensive. I understand that. And I'm not here to tell you that everything happens for a reason in that easy, dismissive way that people use to avoid sitting with real pain. Some things that happen are just painful. Some losses don't come with silver linings you can find quickly or neatly. But I am here to tell you this, that even in those places, especially in those places, there is something present. Something that does not leave. Something that keeps sending small, persistent, quiet messages, even when we have stopped believing we deserve to receive them. The woman on the bench had stopped believing she deserved to be seen. And she was seen anyway. Not because she had earned it. Not because she had prayed the right words or lived the right way. But because that is the nature of what is reaching out to you. It doesn't require your perfection. It only requires a moment of stillness long enough to hear it. And maybe, just maybe, today is that moment for you. You've had something on your mind. Something you've been carrying quietly. Something you haven't said out loud, maybe not even to the people closest to you. And there is a part of you, I want you to notice it right now. A part of you that came here today hoping, even without fully admitting it, that something would speak to exactly that thing. So let me ask you something, and I want you to sit with it rather than answer it quickly. What would it mean for you, for your life, for the way you carry yourself through the next week, the next month? What would it mean if you allowed yourself to believe that what's been finding you lately is not random? That the repeated thoughts, the unexpected encounters, the dreams that linger past morning, what if those were not noise? What if those were the message? There's something that happens to us as we get older that nobody really prepares you for. You start to notice patterns. Not the kind you learn in school, not mathematical patterns or historical ones, but the kind that live in the texture of your own life. You start to see that certain things kept returning to you. Certain lessons arrived wearing different faces but carrying the same core truth. Certain people appeared at moments that, in hindsight, were never accidental. When you're young, you move too fast to notice. You're building, acquiring, becoming. There isn't much time for reflection because the momentum of life keeps pushing you forward. But somewhere along the way, and for most of us it comes after a loss or a long illness or a period of real stillness we didn't choose, you start to look back and see the thread. Not a plan exactly. Something softer than a plan. More like a current. like you were always being carried somewhere, even in the moments when you were certain you were drowning. I think about this often. About how many times in my own life I was absolutely convinced I was lost. That I had made the wrong choice, gone the wrong direction, wasted something I could never recover. And how, from where I stand now, I can see that every single one of those moments was a turning point dressed in the clothing of a mistake. Every closed door was doing something I couldn't see at the time. It was protecting me from a room I wasn't ready for, and redirecting me toward one I didn't even know existed yet. But here's what I want to be careful about, because I think this is where a lot of spiritual conversation goes wrong. I don't want to suggest that pain is just a lesson in disguise and therefore shouldn't be felt. That's not true, and it's not kind. Pain is real. Grief is real. The weight of a hard season is real, and it deserves to be acknowledged as exactly what it is, not spiritually repackaged into something easier to swallow. What I'm talking about is something different. I'm talking about what lives alongside the pain. Not instead of it. Alongside it. Because here is what I've come to believe, and what I think you've felt too, even if you've never quite put it into words. In the hardest moments there is also a presence. It doesn't fix anything immediately. It doesn't explain itself. Doesn't arrive with answers. But it's there. Like a hand on your shoulder in a dark room. You can't see it. You can barely feel it. But something in you knows you are not completely alone. That presence communicates. Not in speeches. Not in lightning. In the small, precise, almost surgical way that only something that knows you deeply could manage. It sends you the book that falls off the shelf and opens to the exact page. It sends you the phone call from the person you hadn't heard from in 2 years, who says something that reaches right into the center of what you've been struggling with. It sends you the dream that leaves you with a feeling you can't shake, a clarity you didn't have when you went to sleep. It sends you a video on a day when you needed something to hold on to. I want you to think about the last 30 days of your life. Not the big events, just the texture of it. The small moments. The things that happened that you noticed but then set aside because you didn't have a framework for them. The number that kept appearing. The name that kept coming up. The feeling in a particular place that you've passed before but that hit differently this time. The thought that arrived fully formed out of nowhere, while you were washing dishes or driving to work. These are not random firings of a tired brain. Or rather, maybe they are sometimes. But some of them are not. And the part of you that knows the difference, that quiet part that doesn't argue or explain but simply knows, that part has been trying to get your attention. The angels of light. And again, I use this language carefully, not as mythology but as the closest human language we have for something that exists beyond our full comprehension. They do not shout. They never shout. They never have to. Because what they're reaching toward in you is not your rational mind. Your rational mind is busy. Has a full schedule. It's managing logistics and worries and plans and regrets. What they're reaching toward is something underneath all of that. Something that was there before the busyness. Something that will still be there when the busyness is finally done. Call it your soul. Call it your deeper self. Call it whatever word doesn't make you flinch. But you know what I'm pointing to. You've always known. It's the part of you that sometimes, in a very quiet moment, feels the full weight and wonder of being alive. The part that looks at the sky at a certain hour and feels something that can't be named. The part that loves people with a fierceness that surprises even you. The part that hasn't given up, even on the days when everything else said to. That part is receiving messages constantly. The question has never been whether the messages are being sent. The question is whether we've learned to receive them. And receiving is a practice. It's not passive. It's not just sitting still and waiting. It's an orientation. A decision made daily to stay open. To let meaning move through your life instead of filtering it all out in the name of practicality. To honor the moments that stop you, even briefly, even in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday. Because the signs don't only come in extraordinary circumstances. That's another thing we get wrong. We think the divine works only in dramatic moments, in near-death experiences, in visions, in sudden miraculous reversals. And yes, sometimes it does. But far more often it works in the grain of regular life. In the repeated, patient, persistent way. That water works on stone. Not breaking it all at once. just returning, 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 until something opens. I want to talk about something that doesn't get discussed enough in conversations like this one. And that's the experience of doubting your own perception. 'Cause I think that's where a lot of people get quietly stuck. Not in the absence of signs, but in the aftermath of them. In that space between receiving something and allowing yourself to trust what you received. You feel something unmistakable. A moment of clarity, a sense of direction, a warmth in your chest that arrives without warning and feels like recognition. Like coming home to a place you've never been. And for a few seconds, maybe even a few hours, you hold it. You carry it carefully. You think, yes, this is real. This means something. And then the other voice arrives. You know, the one. It doesn't announce itself. It just slides in quietly, wearing the costume of reason. Says things like, you're reading into it. Says, you wanted to see a sign so you invented one. It says, be careful, you've been wrong before. And slowly, carefully, it dismantles the thing you were holding until what's left is just a vague memory of a feeling you're no longer sure you're allowed to trust. That voice is not wisdom. I want to be very clear about that. It presents itself as wisdom, as the responsible, mature, grounded perspective. But what it actually is most of the time is old pain wearing a rational mask. It's every time you trusted something and got hurt. Every time you hoped and were disappointed. Every time you opened and the opening cost you something. That voice learned from all of those experiences that the safest thing is to stay closed. To call everything coincidence. To need more proof than any sign could ever provide. And I understand that voice. I've had that voice. I still have it sometimes. It's not the enemy. It's a scared part of you that is trying to protect you in the only way it knows how. But it cannot be the one making final decisions about what is real. Because here is what that voice cannot account for. Cannot account for the accumulation. One sign maybe you dismiss. Two signs maybe still. But when you look at the full picture, when you step back and look at the pattern of your life, at the moments that changed everything, at the people who arrived exactly when they were needed, at the doors that closed and the ones that opened in their place, the accumulation of it is too precise to be random. Too personal to be accidental. Too consistent to be noise. The universe doesn't send a single message and then give up on you when you miss it. That's not how this works. It sends the same essential message in 100 different forms, through 100 different channels, until one of them finally lands. Until one of them arrives in a language you can hear in the exact moment you're finally ready to hear it. Think about your own life for a moment. Think about the belief you hold today that you didn't hold 10 years ago. Think about the thing you now know in your bones that you couldn't have been told back then. You had to live your way into it. Think about how many times the universe tried to show you something that you weren't ready for yet. And how patiently it waited. How it never gave up. How it just kept finding new angles, new messengers, new moments until finally, you were standing in the right place at the right time with enough life behind you to understand what you were being shown. That patience, that relentless, loving, inexhaustible patience, is one of the most profound things I have ever come to understand about the nature of what guides us. Does not operate on our timeline. Does not get discouraged when we miss the message. It does not withdraw its love because we spent years being too busy or too hurt or too cynical to receive it. Simply continues, quietly, faithfully, with a consistency that human love rarely manages. And that's not nothing. That's everything. Now I want to speak to someone specific for a moment. Someone who has been in a season of real difficulty. Not just inconvenience, real difficulty. The kind that changes you. The kind that makes you question things you thought were settled. The kind that has left you wondering whether the faith you used to carry so naturally is still available to you, or whether life has taken it somewhere you can't reach anymore. If that's you, and I think for some of you watching it is, I want you to hear this directly. The silence you've been feeling is not rejection. The absence of obvious signs is not proof that nothing is there. Sometimes the most profound spiritual work happens in exactly those seasons. The quiet ones, the hard ones, the ones where we feel most alone and most unsure. Not in spite of the difficulty. Because of it. There is a kind of deepening that only happens in the dark. A kind of knowing that can only be forged in the fire of genuine uncertainty. And the people who come out the other side of those seasons, not unscathed, not unchanged, but through, they carry something in them that is impossible to acquire any other way. A groundedness, a realness, a compassion for others that comes from having genuinely needed compassion yourself. You are not being punished. You are not being forgotten. You are being prepared for something that requires exactly the depth you are developing right now, in this very season, whether or not it feels like development from where you're standing. The sign you've been waiting for may not look like relief. It may look like strength you didn't know you had. It may look like a small moment of peace in the middle of chaos. It may look like the simple, stubborn fact that you are still here, still seeking, still watching videos like this one on a day when something in you said, "Not yet. Don't give up yet." That voice, the one that said "not yet," that is also a sign. That is also a message. And it deserves to be honored. There's a question I've been sitting with for a long time. And I want to share it with you not because I have a clean answer, but because I think the question itself is worth carrying. The question is this: what does it actually mean to be guided? Because I think most of us, if we're honest, have a picture in our minds of what guidance looks like. We imagine it as a clear voice, a direct instruction, a map with our name on it and a route already drawn in. We imagine that if something divine is truly watching over us, it would make the path obvious. It would remove the confusion. It would spare us the long seasons of not knowing which way to turn. But that's not guidance. That's control. And there's a profound difference between the two. Guidance, real guidance, doesn't take the journey away from you. It walks beside you through it. It doesn't eliminate the uncertainty. It gives you something steady to hold on to while you move through the uncertainty. It doesn't tell you every answer in advance. It gives you exactly what you need, exactly when you need it, in the exact form you're able to receive at that particular moment of your particular life. That distinction changed everything for me. Because when I stopped waiting for the path to become obvious and started paying attention to what was being offered in the present moment, not the future, not the resolution, just this moment right here, everything shifted. Not my circumstances, my perception. And sometimes that shift in perception is the miracle itself. I think about the way light works. Not the dramatic light of midday, when everything is exposed and there are no shadows and you can see clearly in every direction. I think about the light of early morning, the kind that comes in slowly, gradually, illuminating just enough for the next step. You can't see the whole road. You can barely see past the next few feet. But you can see enough to move, enough to continue. And as you move, the light moves with you, always revealing just enough, never more than you can handle, never less than you need. That's how guidance works. That's how the angels of light have always worked. Not in floods of revelation that overwhelm you. In gentle, incremental illumination that matches your capacity to receive it. They know exactly how much light you can hold right now. And they offer exactly that. Not because they're withholding the rest, but because they love you too much to blind you. I want you to think about something you know now that you didn't know 5 years ago. Something important. Something that genuinely changed the way you move through life. Now I want you to think about how you came to know it. Was it through a single dramatic moment of enlightenment? Or was it through a slow accumulation? A book here, a conversation there, a loss that cracked something open, a quiet morning when something clicked into place. For most of us, it's the second. The real transformations rarely announce themselves in advance. They happen gradually, and then all at once, and by the time we recognize them we realize the process had been underway for far longer than we knew. That's happening in your life right now. I want you to really hear that. Something is underway. Something has been in motion for longer than you've been aware of. The signs you've been receiving, the ones you've noticed and the ones you've dismissed and the ones you've half noticed and filed away, they are part of a coherent message. They are not random fragments. They belong together. And if you could see them all laid out in front of you, the pattern would take your breath away. You can't see them all laid out yet. None of us can while we're inside the story. But you can do something that is almost as powerful. You can choose to trust the pattern even before you can see it fully. You can decide, not blindly, not naively, but with the full weight of everything you've lived and learned. You can decide to proceed as though you are held, as though the guidance is real, as though the signs mean what they feel like they mean. And here is the extraordinary thing about that decision. Changes what you're able to perceive. When you move through your days with that orientation, not desperate, not demanding, just open, you start to notice things you were filtering out before. The synchronicities become more visible. The messages become clearer. Not because they suddenly increased in frequency, but because you increased in receptivity. You tuned the instrument. And the music that was always playing became something you could finally hear. This is not magical thinking. This is not wishful self-deception. This is something that has been understood by contemplative traditions across centuries and cultures. That the quality of our attention shapes the quality of our experience. That what we look for we find. Not because we invented it, but because we finally became willing to see what was already there. The angels of light are not waiting for you to become worthy. They are not waiting for you to figure everything out or resolve every contradiction or heal every wound before they extend their presence to you. They are here now. In this moment. In whatever imperfect, complicated, still-in-progress version of yourself showed up today to watch this video and sit with these ideas for a while. You don't have to earn the guidance. You only have to receive it. And receiving begins with something very simple. It begins with acknowledgement. With saying out loud or just inside wherever feels honest, I am open. I am paying attention. I am willing to be shown. That's it. That's the whole prayer, really. 3 sentences or fewer. A willingness to stop defending yourself against the very thing that is trying to reach you. Because here's what I know about the people who are most profoundly changed by their encounters with the divine, with the angelic, with whatever language you use for the sacred. They are not the people who had the most dramatic experiences. They are the people who were paying close enough attention to recognize something quiet as something holy. They were the ones who didn't need thunder. Who could hear a whisper and know it for what it was. That capacity lives in you. Has always lived in you. And today, right now, in whatever room you're sitting in and whatever weight you're carrying and whatever you were doing before this video found you, today is as good a day as any to remember that. Before I continue, I want to pause here for just a moment. Because if you've stayed with me this far, through everything we've sat with together in this video, I don't think that's an accident either. And I want to acknowledge that. If this conversation has touched something real in you, if something here has felt less like information and more like recognition, I want to invite you to subscribe to this channel and join us every single day. 'Cause what we do here is exactly this. We sit together. We go beneath the surface. We talk about the things that matter in the way they deserve to be talked about. Honestly, quietly, without pretense. Click subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and come back tomorrow. Because tomorrow will go somewhere just as real as today. And if something in this video spoke to exactly where you are right now, leave a comment below. Not a polished one. Real one. Tell me what landed. Tell me what you're carrying. I read them. And more importantly, the person sitting in the same quiet room as you, watching this same video, carrying something similar, they need to know they're not alone either. Your words might be the sign someone else has been waiting for. Now, stay with me because there's something I haven't said yet. Something that might be the most important thing of all. We've talked about recognizing signs. We've talked about receiving guidance. We've talked about the patience of whatever it is that reaches toward us, and the ways we block ourselves from feeling it. But there's a piece of this that lives on the other side of all of that. A piece that doesn't get discussed enough. And it's this. What do you do after the sign? Because that's where most people quietly lose the thread. The sign arrives. The moment of clarity comes. The message lands, unmistakably, in the center of your chest. And there is a brief, luminous window where everything feels possible. Where you know exactly what you've been shown and you know exactly what it's asking of you. And then life continues. The dishes need to be done. The phone rings. The week fills back up. And slowly, the luminous feeling fades. And you're left with a memory of certainty rather than certainty itself. And you start to wonder if you imagined it. You didn't imagine it. But you did lose contact with it. And that's a different thing entirely. The signs are not meant to be moments you visit and then leave behind. They are meant to be turning points. Small or large, dramatic or quiet. They are moments where the direction of something shifts. Where a door becomes visible that wasn't visible before. And the work, the real, daily, unglamorous work, is staying turned in the direction the sign pointed you. Even when the feeling fades. Even when the clarity gets cloudy again. Even when the voice of doubt comes back with its rational arguments and its protective cynicism. This is where faith becomes something more than a feeling. It becomes a practice. A discipline of return. Not return to certainty, you may not always have certainty. But return to orientation. Return to the decision you made in that luminous moment. Return to the direction you were shown, and keep walking in it, one ordinary day at a time. I think of it like a compass. A compass doesn't tell you everything about the terrain ahead. It doesn't warn you about the rough patches or the detours or the places where the path disappears entirely and you have to feel your way forward. All it does is tell you which way is north. And that's enough. That's actually everything. Because if you know which way is north, you can always find your way back to the path, no matter how far into the wilderness you've wandered. The signs in your life are your compass. They don't resolve the complexity. They don't remove the difficulty. They just keep pointing, keep orienting, keep saying quietly, faithfully, persistently this way. Not because the way is easy, 'cause the way is yours. And there is something profound about that word. Worse, the signs that find you are not generic. They are not mass-produced spiritual content delivered to everyone equally. They are specific to you, to your history, your wounds, your particular way of seeing, your exact moment in your exact life. The universe does not send form letters. What reaches you has your name on it. It knows the questions you haven't spoken aloud. It knows the fears you've been carrying quietly. It knows what you need to hear and, more importantly, what you're finally ready to hear. That specificity, that intimacy, is what I want you to carry forward from today. Not a general sense that signs exist and guidance is possible, but the personal, specific, deeply felt knowledge that what has been finding you lately is meant for you, addressed to you, crafted for exactly who you are in exactly this season of your life. There's something I want to leave you with, not a conclusion exactly, more like a doorway. You came here today carrying something. I don't know what it is. You might not have had words for it either when you press play. But something in you knew you needed this. Something in you said, not yet. Not the noise. And you listened to that something. And that, quietly, is already the beginning of everything. Because the whole conversation we've had today about signs, about guidance, about the patient, precise, inexhaustible love of whatever it is that watches over us, it was never really about learning something new. It was about remembering something old. Something you knew before life got complicated. Before loss taught you to protect yourself. Before disappointment made you fluent in the language of lowered expectations. You knew once that you were held. Maybe you were very young. Maybe it was in a moment of such complete stillness that everything else fell away and you felt, just for a second, the full reality of not being alone in this. And then life happened. And that knowing got buried under everything life brings. The practical, the painful, the relentless forward motion of simply surviving and building and losing and continuing. But it didn't disappear. Nothing that real disappears. It's been there the whole time. Sending you signals in the only language it has access to. The language of your own life. Your own moments. Your own perfectly ordinary Tuesday afternoons that suddenly feel like they mean something. Your own dreams. Your own unexpected encounters. Your own chest tightening or opening at exactly the right instant, trying to tell you something your mind hasn't caught up to yet. That's not coincidence. Never was. And I think part of you, the part that stayed through this entire video, the part that recognized itself in something said here today, that part already knows that. Has always known that. Was just waiting for permission to trust it again. So here is the only thing I want to say as we close. Not as advice. Not as instruction. Just as one person saying something true to another. You are not lost. You are being found. Slowly, precisely, in the exact way you need to be found. And the signs that have been reaching you, the ones you noticed, the ones you dismissed, the ones you haven't been able to stop thinking about, they are real. They belong to you. They are the fingerprints of something that knows you completely and has. Never, not for a single moment, looked away. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to be certain. You don't have to stop doubting entirely. You just have to stay open. One day at a time. One quiet moment at a time. One small yes to the thing that's been reaching for you. That's enough. That has always been enough. If this video found you today, please don't let it end here. Share it with 5 people who might need to hear something like this. Not because it's perfect, but because someone in your life is carrying something quietly, and this might be exactly the thing that reaches them. You might be the sign they've been waiting for. That's how this works. That's always been how this works. Subscribe to this channel and come back tomorrow. We'll go somewhere real again. We always do. And before you go, leave me a comment. Real one. Tell me what you're sitting with after watching this. Tell me what landed. Tell me what question is alive in you now that wasn't quite formed before. And if there's something you've been wanting to explore, a topic, a question, something you've never quite heard spoken about in the way it deserves to be spoken about, tell me that too. The next video might be for you. Might already be. Take care of yourself today. And pay attention. The signs are still coming.